Ethan immediately protected her behind him, like a lion whose territory had been invaded, glaring at me. Ava, enough. Ann is not well. Why are you always targeting her? Can't you tolerate her that much? Are you so vicious, so jealous? Vicious? Jealous? I lit a cigarette and slowly blew smoke rings in front of him. Ethan hates women smoking the most. He says the smell is cheap and decadent. Especially hates me smoking. Sure enough, his handsome face instantly darkened, his brows furrowed into a frown, and his eyes seemed to be spitting fire. Ava, what are you doing? He rushed over, snatched the cigarette from my fingers, and stubbed it out violently in the crystal ashtray. The force was so great, as if it wasn't a cigarette, but my neck. At that moment, I only felt my heart being clenched tightly, hurting so much that I was about to suffocate. I raised my eyes and gave a mocking smile. What's wrong, President Sue? Can't stand it? You know I hate this, he growled, his voice full of suppressed anger. Oh, you hate it, I said lightly, taking another cigarette from the cigarette case, holding it between my fingers, but not lighting it, just playing with it. Then when you were protecting Chloe, did you ever think about what I hate? We've known each other for 10 years, from school uniforms to wedding dresses. I thought we were a match made in heaven. Chloe only appeared for 3 months, but she easily shook our 10-year relationship. Just a few minutes ago, outside this VIP ward filled with the smell of disinfectant, I clearly heard Chloe say to Ethan in her signature, soft and boneless voice, "Brother Ethan, don't blame Sister Ava. She may just love you too much and is afraid that I will take you away. It's all my fault. I shouldn't have gotten sick. I shouldn't have embarrassed you." I almost threw up on the spot. Song-in, Chloe, this woman is really high level. I pushed the door open and threw a medical report in front of her. Miss Chloe, stop pretending. The doctor said your illness is just a mild seasonal allergy and doesn't even require hospitalization. Chloe's face turned pale instantly, and tears fell like beads from a broken string. Every time she was unintentionally weak, every time she perfectly fainted, every time she thoughtfully conceded, all became Ethan's view of my aggressiveness and unreasonableness. I looked at the man in front of me, this fiancé who kept saying he loved me and wanted to marry me, and suddenly felt extremely unfamiliar. Seeing that I didn't speak, his expression softened slightly, and his tone also softened a bit. Ava, I know you're wronged, but Ann, she's different. Be good, don't make trouble anymore. The wedding will be held as scheduled, I promise. In his eyes, I will always be a subordinate who needs to obey. I looked at the impatience and perfunctoriness that flashed in his eyes and suddenly felt relieved. 10 years. I don't want to continue singing this one-man show. So, there was that scene at the beginning, where I deliberately smoked in front of him. I want to see to what extent his so-called bottom line can be broken for Chloe. My thoughts drifted back many years. My first encounter with Ethan was not pleasant. At that time, I was still a rebellious teenager, hiding in the corner of the backyard of my own villa, secretly smoking my first cigarette. The acrid smoke made me cough terribly. Again with the "be good," a large, bony hand suddenly reached out from the side and snatched the cigarette from my hand. What's a girl doing smoking? Shameless, that's fine. I'm tired. I looked up and saw a handsome young man in a white shirt, his face full of arrogance and disdain. I immediately blew up. Who are you? Is it any of your business? I am your neighbor, Ethan Hamilton, he said coldly. Don't let me see you smoking again. We exchanged insults and parted on bad terms. I thought it was just an unpleasant interlude. Unexpectedly, on the second day of school, he actually became my classmate. Even more unexpectedly, this guy clung to me like a piece of gum. He said that he had never seen a girl as rude, rebellious, and disobedient as me before, and he found it very interesting. I almost rolled my eyes to the heavens. He even made a bet with me, saying that in less than 3 months, he would definitely make me obediently submit to him, and then he would make me kneel down and shine his shoes in front of all the students. I was so angry that I accepted the challenge on the spot. To retaliate against his arrogance, I secretly added something to his usual drink. As a result, he had diarrhea all day and was so weak that he almost had to go to the hospital. I thought he would fly into a rage, but to my surprise, the look in his eyes became even brighter. From then on, he no longer simply provoked and teased, but began a pursuit in the truest sense of the word. He was relentless and came up with all sorts of tricks. What really changed my opinion of him was during my sophomore year. I was kidnapped by a gang of desperados who demanded a huge ransom. Accompanying me was my first love at the time, a seemingly gentle and refined senior. In that critical moment, my first love, who usually took such good care of me, actually abandoned me and ran away alone. He charged in single-handedly and selflessly to save me, to protect me. He was beaten black and blue by the kidnappers, and 2 of his ribs were broken. He stubbornly endured it, shielding me from all the punches and kicks, and was abused for 3 whole days until the police finally rescued us. The day he was discharged from the hospital, we agreed to meet on the school playground. I was about to fulfill the bet we made and kneel down to shine his shoes, but he stopped me. He stood in the setting sun, still wrapped in bandages, but smiling like a child. He said, "Ava Thorne, I don't want you to polish my shoes. I want you to be my girlfriend." He said, "Ava, I like you, not because you're rebellious, not because you're special, just because I like you. I like you as a person." He said, "You owe me a favor, and we'll use this favor when we get married." That day, the sunset was beautiful, and his eyes were bright. I nodded. We officially started dating. He was very good to me, so good that he was impeccable. After graduation, he proposed to me. The Hamilton family, his family, was initially against it. They felt that although my family, the Thornes, was wealthy, it was still a step below their old money. What's more, my mother died early, my father remarried, and the family relationship was complicated, so my reputation wasn't very good either. My father, of course, was happy to see me marry into a wealthy family, but he also put forward some requirements for business cooperation. In order to get married smoothly, we both made compromises. It's Ethan. Ethan gave up his beloved racing career and returned to the Hamilton Group, preparing to take over the family business. I, on the other hand, restrained all my sharpness and worked hard to learn how to be a good wife and mother, learning flower arranging, cooking, social etiquette, and learning how to please his parents. We planned the future together, decorated our new house together, chose a wedding dress together, and dreamed about our honeymoon trip. I thought we would always be this happy. "Ethan, I feel so dizzy." Chloe on the hospital bed suddenly groaned, interrupting my memories at the right time. Ethan immediately became nervous and rushed to the bedside. "Enan, what's wrong? Where do you feel uncomfortable?" I watched their performance with a cold eye. Ethan turned back and saw the unlit cigarette between my fingers, and his anger surged again. He waved his hand violently and knocked the cigarette out of my hand. The cigarette but grazed the back of my hand, leaving a burning pain. I lowered my head, watching the red marks quickly rising on the back of my hand. My heart filled with coldness. He didn't even look at me, and anxiously helped Chloe up. "Enan, I'll take you to the emergency room." Saying that, he was about to pick up Chloe and walk out. "Ethan Hamilton," I called out to him, my voice as calm as a stagnant pool of water. "Do you remember? Back then, you saved me, and I said I owed you a favor." He was stunned for a moment, obviously not expecting me to bring this up. "I'm using that favor now," I said, word by word, with absolute clarity, "to make you get out of my car." "My car?" "Oh yes, the car he drove to the hospital is mine. He has countless luxury cars under his name, but today, he insisted on driving my favorite white sports car." Ethan's face instantly turned ashen. "Ava, do you have to mess around at a time like this?" "Mess around?" I laughed. "Compared to some people faking illness to gain sympathy, this doesn't even count as messing around." Chloe shivered in his arms. "Brother Ethan, I should go myself. Don't let me cause you to quarrel." "Shut up," I said coldly, scaring Chloe to shrink even tighter into Ethan's arms, until Chloe appeared. I looked at Ethan. "Get out of the car, or I'll have the bodyguard ask you to leave." Ethan's fists clenched until they cracked, his chest heaving violently. In the end, he still placed Chloe on the hospital bed and walked out of the ward without saying a word. I followed behind him, watching him walk to the parking lot and open the door to my car. Before he got in, I said, "Leave the car keys. From now on, you are not allowed to touch anything of mine." He suddenly turned his head, looking at me with complex eyes. There was anger, incomprehension, and a trace of emotions I couldn't understand. In the end, he still tossed me the car keys and turned to walk towards his other car. I watched his car speed away, then got into my own car and started the engine, not to the hospital, but back to our home. No, from now on, it's my home. This relationship ends here. In the following days, I dealt with all matters related to him with swift efficiency. I canceled the wedding photo shoot scheduled for next month. I notified the wedding planning company to suspend all preparations. Then, I moved out of the villa we shared. He turned around and asked impatiently, "What is it now?" That villa was bought by him, and both of our names were on it. I packed up my belongings and took them away, leaving all the gifts he gave me, including that huge engagement diamond ring, on the shoe cabinet in the entryway. I moved back to an apartment in my own name, not big, but enough for me to live alone. A week later, my assistant Emily asked me out for dinner, saying she wanted to celebrate my rebirth. We chose a newly opened popular restaurant. Not long after we sat down, I heard a familiar and disgusting voice. "Ethan, this restaurant is famous for its foie gras. Shall we try it?" I looked up and sure enough, I saw Ethan and Chloe, as well as a few of Ethan's cronies, walking in with great fanfare. What a chance encounter. One of Ethan's friends, Mark, was the first to see me. He whistled and said in a frivolous tone, "Yo, isn't this Ava? All alone? What's wrong? Dumped by Ethan, drowning your sorrows in alcohol?" I couldn't be bothered to pay attention to him. Ethan also saw me, and frowned slightly, seeming a little surprised. He walked over, grabbed my wrist, and dragged me into their booth. "Why are you here alone?" he asked, his tone sounding concerned, but I only felt it was hypocritical. Chloe also came in and said timidly, "Sister Ava, don't be angry. Brother Ethan is also worried about you." I'm tired of her green tea performance. I shook off Ethan's hand. "Who I eat with and where I eat is none of your business." Mark started being sarcastic again. "Ava, not to be critical, but as a woman, you should be more sensible. It's a blessing you've accumulated over several lifetimes that Ethan has taken a liking to you, so don't be ungrateful." Instead of stopping Mark, Ethan sat next to Chloe, picked up a peeled shrimp, and considerately fed it to her mouth. Chloe smiled shyly, as happy as a flower. That scene was extremely dazzling. I only felt a pang of pain in my stomach. Recently, my emotions have been unstable, my diet has been irregular, and my old problem has relapsed. Seeing that I didn't speak, Mark thought I was afraid and became even more smug. "Ava, come on, let me toast you a glass as an apology. After drinking this glass of wine, the past is forgotten, and we'll still be friends in the future." He pushed a full glass of red wine in front of me. I looked at him coldly. "I don't drink." "Not giving me face?" Mark_'s face darkened. "Ava, don't be ungrateful." Another friend joined in the heckling. "That's right, drink one, drink one." I picked up the glass, and under their expectant gazes, I suddenly splashed the wine in the glass on Mark's face. "Now, can I go?" Mark wiped the wine stains from his face, trembling with anger. "Ava Thorne, you're fucking asking for it." He raised his fist and was about to charge over. Ethan finally spoke to stop him. "Mark, enough." He stood up and blocked me. "Ava, haven't you made enough trouble?" I looked at him and said, word by word, "Ethan Hamilton, from now on, we go our separate ways and have nothing to do with each other." It was Chloe. Just then, Chloe suddenly screamed "Ah," clutching her wrist and looking at me with tears in her eyes. "My hand, it's so hot." Beside her hand, there was a freshly poured cup of hot tea, but now the cup was overturned, and the tea spilled all over the table. Ethan immediately checked her wrist nervously and saw a patch of redness and swelling. "Ava, what did you do to Inan again?" he roared, his eyes looking like he wanted to kill me. This woman's ability to stage an accident is truly masterful. Ethan ignored me and carefully helped Chloe, saying, "Inan, don't be afraid, I'll take you to the hospital right away." He left me behind and left the private room with his friends, surrounding Chloe. From beginning to end, he didn't ask me a single question about whether my stomach still hurt. I walked out of the restaurant alone, my stomach hurting even more. I had just arrived at the parking lot when I saw Mark chasing after me. He glared at me fiercely. "Ava Thorne, you wait. This isn't over." I ignored him and got straight into the car. Later I found out that after Mark returned to the private room, he embellished the story to Ethan, saying he saw me get into a strange man's car and that the two of us were intimate. Ethan was already drunk at the time, and he was even more furious when he heard this. Ethan drunkenly returned to our former new house. The key was inserted into the lock, and it took several turns to open the door. The light in the entrance hall was on, but greeting him was not a familiar figure, but a room of coldness. On the shoe cabinet, the diamond ring he carefully selected lay there alone, reflecting a cold light. He staggered into the bedroom. In the walk-in closet, my half was completely empty. On the dressing table, my usual skincare products and perfumes were gone. Ethan sobered up a lot in an instant. He rushed to the living room, grabbed his phone, and frantically dialed my number. I looked at the words Ethan flashing on the phone screen and immediately muted it. The stomach medicine was working, but somewhere in my heart, there was still a dull ache. I don't need his concern, especially after he chose to believe Chloe first. The next day, Ethan went directly to my company, Thorne Industries. The receptionist tried to stop him, but he barged in. Ava, what do you really want? He stood in front of my desk, his handsome face showing the fatigue of a hangover and suppressed anger. I looked up from the documents and calmly looked at him. Ethan, I think we've made ourselves clear. I don't understand, he growled. Just because of Chloe? Are you going this far? Yes, I said softly. Ethan, let's call off the engagement. He seemed to have heard the biggest joke in the world. Call off the engagement? Ava, say that again? I said. We are calling off the engagement. Just then, the office door was pushed open. Ethan's parents, Mr. and Mrs. Hamilton, and the pitiful Chloe, walked in together. It seemed that Ethan had notified them in advance. That's good. It saves me from having to notify them separately. Mrs. Hamilton has always disliked me, and at this moment she doesn't even bother to hide the contempt on her face. Ava Thorne, I've said it before, a woman like you is simply not worthy of our Hamilton family. Now you want to call off the engagement? Do you think the Hamilton family's door is one you can enter and exit as you please? I stood up, walked in front of him, my voice not loud, but enough for everyone present to hear clearly. Yes, Mrs. Hamilton, I want to call off the engagement. Very sure. You unfilial daughter. An angry voice came from behind me. I turned around and saw my father, Mr. Thorne, and his young and beautiful stepmother, walking in furiously. I almost laughed out of anger. Ava, are you crazy? Do you know how important the Hamilton family is to our Thorne Industries? How dare you mention breaking off the engagement? My father was so angry that his face turned red. My stepmother pretended to persuade me from the side. Ava, which couple doesn't quarrel? Ethan is such a good man. You must cherish him. Look at your sister Chloe. How sensible and well-behaved she is. Chloe immediately cooperated and lowered her head, pretending to cry. Uncle and aunt, it's all my fault. I shouldn't have let brother Ethan and sister Ava misunderstand. Mrs. Hamilton sneered. Humph, now you know you're wrong? Too late. Our Hamilton family can't tolerate this kind of jealous and unruly daughter-in-law. Ethan had been silent, but now he finally spoke, his tone with an unquestionable command. Ava, kneel down to mom and dad, and Chloe, offer tea, and admit your mistakes. I can let bygones be bygones. I looked at him as if I was meeting him for the first time. Who does he think he is? An emperor? I picked up the teacup from the table and walked up to him. Under his gaze, where he thought I would yield, I raised my hand and splashed the tea and tea leaves in my cup all over his self-righteous face. Ethan Hamilton, you're dreaming. The tea dripped down his hair, leaving him in a terrible state. He was completely enraged. Ava Thorne, you're asking for it. Face? I sneered. Since you all don't want face, why should I save face for you? Today, I'll make it clear. I'm definitely calling off this marriage. No one can force me. My father was trembling with anger and raised his hand to hit me. I'll beat you to death. You rebellious daughter. My eyes sharpened, and I stared at him. Try to touch me. These years I've spent outside haven't been for nothing. My aura was fully unleashed, and he was momentarily stunned, his hand raised in the air, not falling for a long time. The stepmother screamed and lunged forward. You ingrate. How dare you hit your father? I dodged to the side and kicked her calf in one smooth motion. She cried out ouch, and fell flat on her face. Her skirt flipped over, looking utterly wretched. Seeing this, my father became even more enraged. Ava Thorne, you wicked creature, just like your dead mother. You're all cheap. I shouldn't have let your mother in the door in the first place, if it weren't for the shares she had. He spoke recklessly and began to reveal family scandals. The people around the Hamilton family all had expressions of watching a good show. Shares? I interrupted him, took out a document from my bag, and threw it in his face. Is this what you're talking about? My father fumbled to catch it, opened it, and his face turned pale instantly. Equity transfer agreement. How is this possible? I smiled coldly. Forgot to tell you. Before my grandmother passed away, she had already transferred all of her Thorne Industries shares to me. Now, I am the largest shareholder of Thorne Industries. I looked around. watching the shocked and astonished expressions on my father, stepmother, and the Hamilton family, and felt a burst of satisfaction in my heart. So, Mr. Thorne, in what capacity are you lecturing me now? A small shareholder, or a gigolo who lives off his daughter? The stepmother crawled up from the ground, saw the agreement, and collapsed on the spot. No, impossible. Those shares should be mine, mine. She tried to snatch the agreement like a madwoman. Ethan frowned and said to the waiter waiting at the door, "Send these two out." Two tall waiters immediately stepped forward and invited my father and stepmother out, half dragging and half carrying them. The office is finally quiet. The Hamilton family, including Ethan, were still in shock and remained silent for a moment. Chloe was the first to react. She timidly tugged at Ethan's sleeve. "Brother Ethan, it seems like Sister Ava seems to have some misunderstanding about me. Is it because I was sick last time and made you too worried? So Sister Ava is unhappy? I'm sorry, it's all my fault." Ethan's gaze shifted from my share agreement to Chloe, and immediately returned to gentleness. "Anan, it's not your fault. Don't worry, I'll take care of it." He gently patted her hand. Then he turned to me, his tone complex. "Ava, why didn't you tell me about the shares?" I sneered. "Tell you? Tell you what? Tell you that I am not the woman you thought you could manipulate at will?" "Enough, Mrs. Hamilton screamed, completely losing her ladylike demeanor. "No matter how many shares you have, it won't change the fact that you are an uncultured wild girl. You dare to hit your elders. You dare to splash tea on Ethan. Our Hamilton family will never let a woman like you into our home." She pointed at me, her voice as sharp as fingernails scraping across glass. "Break off the engagement. It must be broken off immediately." I looked at Mrs. Hamilton's face, distorted with anger, and suddenly found it a little funny. "Mrs. Hamilton," I took a step forward, closing in on her. "Are you sure you want me to break off the engagement?" She raised her head. "Nonsense. You don't actually think you can marry into our Hamilton family, do you? Dream on." "Oh, that's wonderful." I smiled even colder. "I was afraid you wouldn't agree." I walked up to her, leaned close to her ear, and said in a voice only the two of us could hear, "Mrs. Hamilton, do you remember Jean Shintang? That club that specializes in special business?" Mrs. Hamilton's face suddenly changed drastically, and a hint of panic flashed in her eyes. Jean Shintang is an unknown secret of the Hamilton family. On the surface, it is a high-end club, but behind the scenes it is involved in money laundering, power and sex deals, and other activities. Once the secret is exposed, it will be enough to discredit the Hamilton family and even face imprisonment. And I happen to have some key evidence. I straightened up, looked at her face trying to remain calm, and smiled more sarcastically. "I heard you've been eating vegetarian food and chanting Buddhist scriptures recently, to pray for Mr. Hamilton?" Mrs. Hamilton is a Buddhist and has abstained from alcohol for many years, not to mention meat. I picked up a plate of roast meat from the table and poured a glass of red wine. "Since we're calling off the engagement, there's nothing to worry about anymore." I handed the plate and glass to her. "Mrs. Hamilton, have a piece of meat and a glass of wine to celebrate the termination of our engagement." Her hand trembled, and her face was alternating between pale and white. "Ava Thorne, don't go too far," Mr. Hamilton roared. "Too far?" I looked at Mr. Hamilton. "Mr. Hamilton, would you like a piece too? Or would you like to hear what's new with Jean Shintang lately?" Mr. Hamilton immediately shut up. Mrs. Hamilton's forehead broke out in a cold sweat. She stared at me intently, her eyes resentful, but she didn't dare to refute me. Finally, under my gaze, she took the plate with a trembling hand, picked up a piece of roast meat, closed her eyes, and struggled to stuff it into her mouth as if eating poison. Then, she picked up the wine glass and gulped down the red wine in one breath. She chewed the meat thoroughly, gulped down the wine, covered her mouth, and started to retch. I looked at her disheveled appearance, and felt no pity in my heart. This is the price to pay. I picked up my bag and turned to leave. "Ava," Ethan chased after me. He grabbed my arm, his eyes filled with complexity. "What exactly do you want? Why do you insist on calling off the engagement? Is it because of Anan? Anan?" I shook off his hand. "Do you still think it's because of her, even now?" I looked at him, my eyes cold. "Ethan Hamilton, the problem between us has never been Chloe. 10 years of relationship. Is it nothing in your eyes?" he asked, his voice with a hint of unfamiliar fragility. 10 years of relationship? When you pushed me away, defended Chloe, accused me of being vicious, knocked away my cigarette, burned my hand, and even prioritized sending her to the hospital. Did you ever ask me what those 10 years of relationship meant? When you allowed your friends to humiliate me, when you ignored my stomachache to peel shrimp for Chloe, did you ever ask me what those 10 years of relationship meant? When you ordered me to kneel down and admit my mistake, did you ever ask me what those 10 years of relationship meant? I looked straight into his eyes and said, clearly and forcefully, Ethan Hamilton, these 10 years mean nothing to me. He seemed stung by my words, the expression on his face instantly freezing, and then he laughed in extreme anger. Good, very good, Ava Thorne, you really are heartless. Just then, a figure rushed over and knelt in front of me with a thump. She cried like a pear blossom in the rain, grabbing the hem of my skirt. Sister Ava, please, don't break off the engagement with Ethan. It's all my fault. You can hit me, scold me, anything, just please don't leave Ethan. He really loves you. He will die without you. Her performance was better than a professional actor. Kneeling in front of me, she kept saying I could hit her and scold her, but silently accusing me of being heartless, highlighting her own kindness and greatness. I looked down at her, my eyes without a trace of emotion. Raising my hand, I slapped her with a crisp, loud smack. I gave her a slap in the face. Get out of here, I said. Chloe covered her face, looking at me in shock, seemingly not expecting that I would actually hit her. Ethan was also stunned. Just then, a man walked over and naturally took my hand. He was wearing a well-tailored suit, with a tall and straight figure and a refined temperament. Ava, are you ready? He asked, his voice gentle and magnetic. I smiled at him and said, well, it's okay now. Ethan looked at the man with hostility in his eyes. Who are you? I took the man's arm and leaned against him. Looking at Ethan provocatively, I forgot to introduce him. This is my new love, Julian Chen. New love? Ethan's voice rose several octaves. You just broke off the engagement with me, and you already have a new love? Yes, I said in a light tone. I met him on the 3rd day after the breakup. Julian is excellent, much better than some people. I deliberately emphasized the words some people. Julian smiled slightly at Ethan, with a winner's composure. Mr. Ethan, I've heard so much about you, he said. Then, he took my hand, turned and left, completely ignoring Ethan, who was still standing there in a daze. Ethan stood there, watching Julian and me walk away side by side, his fists clenched, his eyes full of anger and unwillingness. We walked out of the office building and got into Julian's car. I let out a breath, and my tense nerves finally relaxed. Thank you, Julian, I said. Julian turned to look at me, a hint of inquiry in his eyes. A shield. Are you satisfied? I nodded, very satisfied. Thanks to you for today's scene. He started the car. You're welcome. But, Ava, between us, is it just a shield? I looked at him and said seriously, Julian, you are a good person, but I'm sorry. I just ended a relationship and I just want to be alone right now. Julian's eyes darkened, but quickly returned to normal. I understand. He didn't mention any further development. 1 month later, my company, Thorne Industries, is growing steadily. Julian asked me out for coffee. Ava, he said, his tone a little serious, have you been following the movements of the Hamilton Group lately? I shook my head. No. What's wrong? The Hamilton Group has recently suffered several hostile takeovers and business snipes, resulting in heavy losses, Julian said. As far as I know, these actions all point to one goal, forcing Ethan Hamilton to show up. Force him to show up? I asked, puzzled. Yes, Julian said. He hasn't appeared in public since he separated from you last time, and even the company affairs have been handed over to the vice president. The Hamilton family is anxious and has released a statement saying that as long as he can get you to attend a dinner party and resolve the conflict between the two families, they will stop all business operations. Dinner party? I frowned. Yes. Julian looked at me. That dinner party was prepared for you personally by Ethan Hamilton. He paused and added, I heard the location is the villa you used to live in. I hesitated when I received the dinner invitation from Ethan. To go, or not to go? Julian's words echoed in my ears. The dinner he had personally prepared for me, held in the villa where I used to live. In the end, I decided to go, not for him, but to completely end the past. When I arrived at the villa, the entrance was full of luxury cars. Apparently many people had come. I took Julian's arm and walked into the familiar living room. The luxury remained, but the air was filled with an unfamiliar perfume. My eyes swept across the crowd, and I saw Ethan. He stood in the center of the crowd, much thinner, with a hint of haggardness on his face, but with unusually bright eyes, and standing next to him was Chloe. She was wearing a white dress, with a sweet smile, greeting the guests as the hostess. I understood everything in an instant. This dinner party was not to win me back at all, but to announce to everyone who Ethan Hamilton's real hostess is. He's humiliating me. Ethan's eyes instantly turned gloomy when he saw Julian and me appear together. He walked over, his gaze lingering on my arm linked with Julian's for a few seconds. "Ava, I'm glad you could come," he said, his tone devoid of emotion. I laughed. "Ethan, you threw a great dinner party, but you changed the hostess a little too quickly." I laughed so hard that tears almost came out. Chloe immediately stepped forward, took Ethan's other arm, and said gently, "Sister Ava, thank you for coming to Ethan and my dinner party." "You?" Julian chuckled, his eyes filled with undisguised contempt. "Miss Chloe, may I ask what your status is? As his fiancée, or in some other capacity?" Ethan's face was extremely unpleasant. "Julian Chen, please watch your words." "My words?" Julian shrugged. "I'm just stating the facts. After all, Ava was the fiancée, Mr. Ethan publicly announced. As for some people, isn't it a bit like a cuckoo taking over the nest?" Just as the atmosphere was becoming tense, Ethan's phone rang. He glanced at the number, his expression changed slightly, and he said to Chloe, "I'll take this call, I'll be right back." Then he hurriedly left the living room. Julian also took a call, apologized to me, and left. Only Chloe and I were left in the living room, along with a group of guests watching the show. It was Chloe. The smile on Chloe's face became smug again. She walked up to me, lowered her voice, and said, "Ava, did you see that? Ethan only has me in his heart. This banquet was specially prepared for me. He said that after he takes care of some minor troubles, he will officially announce our relationship." "You think you've won?" I looked at her, my eyes like I was looking at a clown. "Isn't it?" Chloe raised her eyebrows. "You think bringing that man here will make Ethan regret it? Don't be silly. He only has me in his eyes and heart now." I smiled coldly. "Is that so? Then I wish you enjoy your triumph for a little longer." I whispered in her ear, "After all, the show has only just begun." I excused myself to go to the restroom, wanting to get some fresh air. I had just reached the end of the hallway when I was pulled into the study next to it by a force. He pinned me against the door, breathing heavily, his eyes filled with complex and fervent emotions. "Ava, why do you have to do this to me?" he asked in a low, hoarse voice. "Like this to you?" I struggled to push him away. "Ethan Hamilton, are you out of your mind? I know you are still angry with me." He lowered his head, trying to kiss me. "Can we start over? I was wrong. I shouldn't have treated you like that. I shouldn't have believed in." His kisses landed on my cheeks and neck, with a hint of urgency and desperation. "Ethan, let me go." I pushed him hard. Just then, the door of the study was violently pushed open from the outside. He stood in the doorway, his face terribly gloomy. "Ethan Hamilton!" Julian roared, rushing in and punching Ethan. Ethan was knocked back a few steps, blood seeping from the corner of his mouth. He wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, looked at Julian, his eyes filled with a crazy possessiveness. "Who the hell are you? Get out of here." "I'm Ava's man," Julian retorted without backing down. "You dare touch her and see what happens." The two men wrestled together. Fists, knees, landed heavily on each other's bodies. Ethan fought and roared, "Ava is mine. Mine. I won't let her go." Julian sneered, "Yours? What did you do to her? How dare you say she's yours?" I regret it. I regret it," Ethan shouted, his eyes looking at me, full of pain and pleading. "Ava, I was wrong. I can't live without you." Just as they were fighting fiercely, a siren suddenly came from outside. Several police officers rushed in, heading straight for Chloe and her parents. "Chloe Wong, you are suspected of fraud. Please come with us." Chloe and her parents were dumbfounded on the spot. The guests also began to whisper among themselves. Ethan and Julian stopped fighting and looked towards the door. Chloe screamed, "No, impossible. You've arrested the wrong person." She tried to break free, but the police restrained her. "Fraud?" Ethan looked at me, his eyes full of shock and confusion. I walked out of the study, stood at the door, and watched Chloe being taken away by the police. "Yes, fraud," I said calmly. "Chloe Wong, formerly known as Lianan. Her parents are also repeat offenders. 3 years ago, They were wanted for a similar fraud case. Over the years, they have been on the run, continuing to commit fraud while on the run. Chloe pretended to be sick to get close to you, also to defraud the Hamilton family of money. How do you know this? Ethan asked, his voice hoarse. I met his gaze and said, word by word, because the person who called the police was me. You? Yes. I suspected her long ago. So, I hired a private investigator to investigate her background. All her illnesses, all the coincidences, were elaborate scams she designed. I watched Chloe being escorted away by the police, my face devoid of any expression. Ethan's face turned extremely ugly. He finally realized that I came here today not for some dinner party, but for revenge. In order to expose Chloe, and to completely sever the relationship between us. When Chloe was escorted to the door, she saw Ethan. Like grabbing the last straw, she shouted hoarsely, Brother Ethan, save me, save me. I didn't lie to you. I really love you. It's Ava. She framed me. She wants to take revenge on me. She reached out, trying to grab Ethan. Ethan looked at her face, distorted by fear and despair, and could no longer associate her with the gentle and sweet Chloe. He suddenly raised his foot and kicked away Chloe's outstretched hand. Get out, he roared. Chloe was kicked to the ground and forcibly taken away by the police. The dinner party broke up unhappily. The guests whispered and quickly left. I walked alone to the back garden, stood beside the bench where we used to sit, and lit a cigarette. The night wind blew, bringing a hint of coolness. Footsteps came from behind. It's Julian and Ethan. They walked up to me one after the other. I had just lit a cigarette when two hands reached out at the same time to light it for me. One was Julian's, and the other was Ethan's. I looked at the two hands before me, one warm and strong, the other scarred and trembling. I didn't choose either. I used my own hands to gather the flame and light the cigarette. I took a deep drag, then slowly exhaled the smoke. Julian, let's go, I said. Julian nodded and naturally stepped forward, taking my hand. I didn't look at Ethan and walked straight to the door. Ethan stood there, watching Julian and me leave side by side, like a statue. In the days that followed, my phone kept receiving long text messages from Ethan. He apologized, explained, reminisced about the past, and even begged. He said he was wrong, he was blind, and he knew how much of a bastard he was. He said he couldn't live without me, that he loved me, and always had. He said he was willing to give up everything, as long as I came back to him. Every text message was sincere and filled with heartfelt emotion, but I didn't open a single one. I just watched the number of unread messages on the screen keep increasing. The texts continued for a month, and then suddenly stopped. Chloe's smile froze on her face. I thought he'd finally given up. Unexpectedly, a few days later, Mrs. Hamilton found me. She looked much more haggard and no longer had her former arrogance and meanness. Miss Ava, she looked at me, her tone humble. Please, go see Ethan. She told me that Ethan had completely collapsed since that dinner party. He locked himself in the house, not eating or drinking, and refusing to see anyone. He's dying, Mrs. Hamilton choked. Only you can save him. Please, go see him. Mrs. Hamilton gave me a key. It's the key to that villa. I hesitated for a long time. In the end, I still went. It's not because I'm soft-hearted, but because I want to make a clean break. When I opened the door to the villa and walked into the living room, I was stunned by the scene before me. The once warm and luxurious living room was now a mess. In the center of the living room, a huge iron cage stood out strikingly. Inside the cage, Ethan was curled up in a corner, his beard unkempt, his eyes dull, and he looked like a withered tree. He locked himself in a cage. Self-inflicted imprisonment. Chloe's smile froze. I stood outside the cage, watching him. He looked up at me, his eyes devoid of surprise, only a deathly stillness. You've come. His voice was as hoarse as sandpaper. Ethan, what are you doing? I asked. The door was locked. It's Ethan. He didn't answer, just stared at me with a hint of obsession I couldn't understand in his eyes. I walked forward, found the lock on the cage, and opened it. Come out, I said, but he didn't move, still curled up in the corner, as if that cage was his only sanctuary. I looked at him and suddenly felt a little sad. Ethan, I said, do you think you can wait for the person you want to wait for by locking yourself up? He didn't say anything. It's Julian. Do you think that by doing this, you can soften my heart and make me come back to you? He remained silent. I walked to the side of the cage, squatted down, and looked at his empty eyes. Ethan, I whispered. I won't wait for you anymore. I am here not to save you, nor to forgive you. I just want to tell you that I have let go. Letting go of the past, letting go of you, letting go of everything. I stood up and took one last look at him. Take care of yourself. After I left the villa, I heard that Ethan was sent to the hospital due to acute gastroenteritis, caused by prolonged starvation, followed by a sudden binge-eating episode, which had weakened his body. After being discharged from the hospital, although he regained his health, he lost a lot of weight, and his eyes became deeper and more melancholy, looking like a withered tree. He returned to the Hamilton Group, but he was no longer as high-spirited as he used to be. Thorne Industries went public successfully, and its market value has multiplied several times. At the IPO celebration banquet, Julian walked up to me with a glass of wine. Ava, he looked at me, his eyes gentle and firm. I told you, I would wait for you. Now, can you give me a chance? I looked at him, at his silent companionship and support over the past year. I smiled and nodded. Okay. I raised my glass and gently clinked it against his. The liquor goes down with a hint of sweetness. Everything in the past has dissipated like smoke. The future is a brand new beginning.